working our way through it, and very pleased with the progress that we're making. We got a lot of young guys that are making a lot of progress. Very pleased with some of our older, more experienced players and in terms of the leadership that they're providing. I think that's very, very important that, somebody steps up and says, match my intensity. Elko tells these guys a lot of stories and, talks about great players and how they affect other people. And sometimes I think that we all get so self-absorbed that we forget about that, especially when, times are difficult. We got a lot of guys focusing on the process of what they need to do to be better players. I think we got some young guys that are still probably swimming a little bit in terms of all the multiples and things that are happening to them out there. But, we want to have a clear vision of what we want to accomplish as a team, and everybody committed to doing everything they need to do to try to contribute in a way that they can make a positive impact on that and also have the personality to positively affect other people. Unfortunately, Jeremy Griffin tore his ACL, non-contact injury. Night we went inside on the turf. I don't think the turf had anything to do with it. Just one of those things. So it's too bad. He will have surgery and he will be out for the season. But other than that, everything's going along as scheduled. This time of the year, things are difficult. It's tough. It's tough for everybody. And as I've said before, the teams that manage it the best are the teams that have the best chance to be successful. So we're working our way through that.
So is Coach Hunseri going to be all right for the first game? Saw him on crutches today.
Well, we're wondering if we should put him on IR and sort of get a roster spot so we can get somebody else in here. But he's got a cartilage. He needs to get scoped. So I told him he could be in a golf cart out there, so he chose to, show a little mental toughness and get out there on crutches. Didn't seem like it affected his performance much.
And also, you probably heard Zeke Knight is trying to get back to playing football again at Stillman across the way. Knowing what you know of his situation, what was your response to that?
Well, everybody has to make their own choices and decisions. I know Zeke, really wanted to play. That was never an issue. We did our due diligence and, sent him to the Mayo Clinic and had specialists all over the country. It was our intention to try to find a way that he could play here. And our medical people could never ever find a way that was safe with his best interest in mind and his future medically to okay him to play. If somebody else chooses to do that, that's their decision and we can't do anything about that. And I'm just hopeful, and certainly my thoughts and prayers will be with him that he has a lot of success in the future and doesn't have any issues in the future relative to the medical condition he had here.
Hey, Coach. I saw Javier Arenas make a pretty spectacular one-handed catch at practice today. With his big playability, do you ever consider working him into the offense a little bit?
We really haven't. He's got a pretty full plate with what he does. I'm sure he would be a very good offensive player if we did. He has a lot of roles on defense. He's very important to that. He has a tremendous role on special teams, being a fantastic return guy, one of the best in the history of the school. It's something that we have talked about before, but I just don't know if we will consider doing that in the future or not. But I'm sure if we did it, he would be a real positive asset to the offense and what he could do as an offensive player.
Also, DJ Fluker played a lot more defensive tackle and offensive tackle in high school. Is the development a little slower for somebody like that?
Well, I think he played most of the last 2 years of high school as a offensive player. And, what I would be more concerned about is guys understanding what it physically takes to get in shape to be able to sustain their performance. Because when they get tired, they make mental errors. They can't give the same effort. They can't play with the same toughness. They don't have the same mental intensity to focus and make mental errors. So part of his development is conditioning and ability to sustain. So that has nothing to do with whether you play offense or defense. And I don't really feel like he has any more experience one way or the other. In fact, more recently, he's played a lot more offense and played very little defense, and has thought of himself, his vision of himself as a player is to be an offensive player.
Coach, you talked about leadership earlier. On last year, you had a really small but kind of concentrated group of senior leaders, and then this year you have a much larger senior class. Does that create a different style of leadership?
I think it depends on the personality of the players. And we didn't have very many seniors last year, but we had fantastic leadership. Fantastic leadership. And we had some guys that were as good a leaders as you're ever going to find. Rashad Johnson, Antoine Caldwell, John Parker did a good job. Travis McCall set a great example every day he went out there. Bobby Greenwood was a guy that set a good example and affected other people with his personality and his example. So we had fantastic leadership last year. I don't think leadership just comes from seniors. I think you have players who are very good players that can be of any age that can affect other people. And I think it's important that players don't think they have to be seniors to affect other people. I think you have to have concentrated leadership on your team in groups so that somebody in each group, whether it's the DBs, the linebackers, the defensive line, the receivers, the offensive line, the running backs, affects that group. Then you have to have guys that affect units on both sides. And then you have some guys that can get the whole team to respond to the things that you want to do. And I think, one of the things that got talked about last night, which is kind of interesting, is how we all sort of judge everything, and that we really need to get out of that because we internalize those judgments in negative ways a lot of times, and then we don't have a positive attitude and we don't affect people in the right way. And if you just think about how many times you judge somebody, and the example Elko gave last night was somebody knocked the mirror off his car, brand new BMW. He knew the guy that did it, guy in a pickup truck in his neighborhood, really upset with the guy. But when he goes home, his kid's sick, he got to take his kid to the emergency room. When he comes outside and gets in his car, the mirror means nothing because the kid's so much more important. But yet, you're judging what happened to your car, affecting your whole day, and everything that you really want to try to get accomplished gets affected by some external clutter that really means nothing. Really means nothing in the big scheme of things. And if you lost everything you have today and you still have tomorrow, you got what's most important. That's the point. Well, we got a lot of guys out there, they're self-absorbed. They miss a pass, they miss a block, they make a mental error on a play, it affects them the next play. They can't come back and go to the next play. So we need leadership to affect them, and we need people to understand they don't need to internalize and get emotional about making an error or mistake or not doing something right. They just need to learn from it, grow from it, and get better, and be able to focus on the things that are going to help them get where they want to go. And that takes positive energy and attitude, not a bunch of judgment. And we also have players out there that get upset. We give up a play, they get upset with the guy that messed up. Well, nobody feels any worse than the guy that gave the play up. So now we lose our whole poise as a unit because one guy did something bad. That's where strength and personality and competitive character is a real key to being successful. And that's something that was very good on our team last year. To go to LSU and win, to go to Georgia and win, to go to Tennessee and win, to beat Clemson in Atlanta. You overcome a lot more on the road. To me, that's where you really get a sense of who are we.
Coach, would you comment on the progress and play of Cullen Peak, and particularly, and also just the tight end situation in general?
Yeah, we feel pretty good about the tight end situation. Colin actually has been able to do more than we anticipated. We only practice him once a day, so on the days we have two-a-days, like tonight, we won't practice him. It's, of course, sort of a practice that we used to use with some guys over 30 in the NFL in training camp. They couldn't sustain if you made them go too much, especially if they had some old injuries. And he's done very well with his foot, but yet we don't want to create an overuse problem that puts him in a position where he can't continue to improve and get better. The two guys that we moved to tight end, Michael Williams and Andre Billingsley, both have shown that they have some potential to be contributors at that position in the future. Michael was there a little bit longer, and he's developed a little more quickly. But Billingsley really has a lot of strength and power to become a very good blocker.
How mental is the position, the center position? You've got to have the athleticism, but how tough is it just knowing all the calls, the reads?
Well, I think the entire offensive line is dependent on somebody in a leadership position based on the front and based on the position of the defensive players to make the correct call relative to how we're going to try to block. Just because you know how you're going to block them doesn't mean you're going to get them blocked, but at least you're going to go about it the right way. Then you have a chance to fundamentally execute. And our centers have typically done a really good job of that. I think we're getting a very good job of that done right now, especially with Vallejos has done a really good job of that. He's smart. He understands concepts. And, this game is not as complicated. They basically can line up in some kind of odd, which we do, some kind of over or under, which you got a three technique on one side or the other. So things get designed to the three technique or the lesser technique, and the calls kind of get going from there. And sometimes people play double sync. So you got about 4 different things that can happen to you where you got a three technique on both sides. So, and I think once the players understand that and sort of get it conceptually, it's not as difficult as it might seem.
Coach, during the spring, what was it about Robbie Green that you just kind of knew that he was going to be your guy there?
Well, I think there's a lot of competition at that position, so to make the statement that he's our guy there is, well, we try to give everybody an opportunity. We play a lot of guys in a lot of roles. Robbie's played that position. We have 3 safeties that we feel are starters: Robbie Green, Mark Barron, and Justin Woodall. We have 2 other safeties that have a lot of experience that we feel like they could play in any time, in any situation. And that's Ali, Sharif, and Tyrone King. But there's a lot of competition at those positions, and I can't tell you who's going to start at those positions right now. Robbie Green is a very good football player. He plays hard. He's very instinctive. He's got good ball skills. He's got good range in a deep part of the field. And he's done a nice job of developing at that position. So we're pleased with his development, but there is a lot of competition at that position. Mark Barron has really come on. Last year I've admittedly said we gave him too many roles. He was such a good athlete that we wanted to get him in the game, so we kept giving him a new role, a new position to learn, and he stayed confused probably a lot of the time. This year we've got him doing 2 different things, and he's doing extremely well and making a lot of plays. And I think is a guy that can be a very good player for us.
Coach, this will be the last time we'll talk to you before your team goes to the stadium on Saturday, and just curious if there were any points of emphasis. Is it a full scrimmage? How is Saturday going to work?
Well, I think at this point, this scrimmage is we want players to play what we've been practicing. We want the young players to have an opportunity to play where they've been playing so we can evaluate them as football players. And that's basically, we're going to play our offense and our defense, and we're going to play against each other. and we're still evaluating where people are in their development relative to how they can contribute to our team based on what we do. And we're not really concerned with what anybody else does. So that we can make some evaluations of which guys are we going to invest our time in and coach for this year. And that's going to be critical. So if we get too complicated with what we're doing and we don't allow them to go out there and just fundamentally do what they know, it could have some effect on our ability to evaluate them. So the first teams will probably do a little bit more than some of the other guys. And hopefully we'll get everybody a good number of turns and reps so that we can make an evaluation. Because, some guys play a lot better when the lights go on. Some guys don't play as well. So this is the only way that we have to evaluate. We have 2 scrimmages. This is the first one. I think it's important that we get the right people in the right place and start developing in those positions after we have this first scrimmage.